Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Mastering Midlife, How to Thrive When the World Asks the Most of You. I am your host, Mark Silverman. Today, I get to talk to one of my favorite people. I met her about a year ago. Her name is Shelley Paxton. She is the founder and chief soul officer at Soulbbatical Coaching and Consulting, and we'll find out more about what that is in a little while. She wrote the upcoming book. It's coming out later this year called Soulbbatical, A Corporate Rebel's Guide to Finding Your Best Life. And I met Shelley when she was still a corporate radical. So this is going to be a great conversation. She's formerly a VP of Global Marketing and Branding at Harley-Davidson. So she's the real deal. I don't just bring on coaches who are, haven't been in the trenches and haven't lived the life we live. So we were talking before the show started about how we're going to celebrate her 50th birthday. I just gave the reveal that she is part of our demographic. Shelley, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was an awesome intro.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. Yeah. I love you so much, and I'm just excited to have a conversation I get to share.
Oh.
So let's go with the prepared question. What is a Soulbbatical?
Oh, it's interesting. And as you know, it's taken me pretty much until now, until writing this book, to figure this out, right? This is an ongoing journey for me. Soulbbatical is a totally made up word, as I'm sure everybody listening has figured out, or watching, I should say. And I really, when I was leaving Harley-Davidson about 2.5 years ago, I kind of crashed these two words together, soul and sabbatical. And I was like, I just wanted to give everybody something to hang on to, because they thought I was absolutely freaking nuts for leaving this big corporate job. And I wanted to help people.
And what actually looked like a fun corporate job, a relevant corporate job, a hip corporate job, but a corporate job nonetheless.
A corporate job nonetheless, exactly. And yeah, and actually it's funny you say that, because that's why people were like, you're leaving the sexiest job on the planet. And I know on the surface it looked like that. And this really wasn't about Harley-Davidson. It was a corporate job, but it was really about what was going on inside of me. And it was about my desire to, after some pretty terrible things were happening to me, to really get in touch with my soul and nurture my soul and understand my purpose. So the handle that I gave it was Soulbbatical. And I thought at the time that it was this journey of about a year where I was going to walk away, and I was just really going to get to understand me and my identity in a much deeper level. And what ended up happening was the past 2.5 years of going, oh my God, Soulbbatical is actually a way of being. It's an invitation to owning your purpose and speaking your truth and creating the life you really want to live. That's it. And so that's what I live now. And that's what I coach around now. And who knows where it's going to go from here.
I love that. And again, in speaking with you, I know that you are like rubber meets the road, real deal kind of human being. But if I'm listening to this, and I'm going to roll my eyes at the Californian leaning of, what do you mean find my true self, right? And all that stuff.
Yeah.
Why is that important? Like, why? Because I know you were, you being very successful and being in a sexy job. And I know you loved a lot of the job and what you did. And given the branding of that particular company, you were so good at, successful. Why was it so important? Why was the cost of not exploring this so big?
Yeah, so much of this is in my book, and it's like I can feel the emotion coming up, because I've been writing about some of the toughest bits of this journey for me. So it wasn't like, so I didn't even realize until I left Harley how attached I was, how tethered my identity was to these titles. I honestly didn't realize that until I walked out the door, and I was like, oh my God, who is Shelley Paxton? Like, beneath all that armor, beneath all of that polish, like, who is she? But I'll tell you what happened that led me to asking that question. It was a whole series of events over probably from the time I was 36 to the time I was 46 when I left Harley. When I was 36, I went kind of out of alignment with my soul. The company that I was working for at the time asked me to take a short-term stint over in Shanghai, China. I had lived around the world, traveled around the world. I love it. It's part of my DNA. Like, I have wanderlust to the core. But I was married at the time. We were trying to have kids at the time. And I chose my job, and I chose a short-term assignment. And what the universe delivered to me after that was a big old smackdown. I was sick for a year. I was being treated at the Mayo Clinic. I had a bacterial infection that destroyed my digestive system. And I didn't pay attention. I picked myself back up and I just kind of like chugged on. I'm like, oh, I'm a warrior. I can do this. And that led to divorce. So my marriage ended for a whole lot of reasons after that, which led to me not really wanting to be on this planet anymore, which thankfully I survived, which led to me taking yet another really challenging corporate role and just fighting through it and getting sick multiple times. And I thought, what am I not listening to? Pain is a gift. So if I sit and I listen and I try to understand it, what is it trying to tell me? I am somehow out of alignment with myself. I am not making decisions that are in alignment with who I really am. So who am I really?
So you made the connection to the physical smackdown to this is somebody's trying to tell me something.
Late in the game. So probably by the time I was like 46, around the time I was leaving Harley-Davidson, I was like, oh, I had this horrible nightmare. Can I tell you about the nightmare?
Please.
So this is actually, I think, how the book is starting. And the nightmare that this was like the final straw for me. Like, if I don't figure this out, I'm not probably going to live through this. Right. So for the last year that I was at Harley, I was getting woken up about 4 or 5 nights a week by the exact same nightmare. And what was happening as I was walking into this nightmare, I was in an apartment that looked like the place I lived in Milwaukee, but it was devoid of life. Like, it had all the signs that I lived there, but no life, chilly, like kind of a murder scene kind of situation. Seriously. And I would walk into it and I would know that something was wrong. And I would see this hallway that didn't actually exist in my real apartment. And this force would lead me down the hallway. And there was always a door at the end of the hallway. And I would cautiously open that door and I'd peek in and I would see this dark, barren, chilly room. No windows, no decor, no furniture, no nothing. Nothing in there except on the opposite side, I could see the outline of one of those kind of small utility closets with a dim flickering light coming out underneath it. And that same force would compel me to cross that room, compel me to open that door. And every single time I opened that door, I saw my dog laying down in a puddle on the floor. And my dog had been dead for 6 years. And my dog was alive and neglected and malnourished and he was longing for attention. And it took me good 4 or 5 months of having this nightmare and a bunch of meditation to start to put together the love me, feed me, listen to me, nurture me. I was like, oh my God, I'm staring at my soul. This is my soul in this nightmare every night that is just snapping me out of it. And it took me 6 months to just put all my sort of affairs in order to then make the decision to walk away and start to learn more about that precious, beautiful soul of mine.
It's so interesting. I wish your story was unique, like the names and the face, but it's not unique. It's, if our mutual friend Mandy Lato went through her story on an earlier podcast with me of adrenal fatigue, but fighting all the way down. She had her dukes up and fighting, and I'll get another corporate job. Let's work our way through this, and to finally listen to something inside. Maybe you didn't need to leave the corporate world. Maybe there was just a shift. So the people who are listening, it doesn't mean, I'm not going to listen to that voice because I'm not leaving my job like she is. That voice may be telling you that you just need to take Sundays to yourself. Who knows what it's telling you? But it almost always ends up with, I'm on the ground and it won't leave me alone.
It's so true. And it's so, one of the things I talk about is self-compassion is one of the principles of Soulbbatical. It's something I really had to learn, self-love and self-compassion, and this idea that being selfish, being self-first isn't selfish. And it took me a long time to understand that. And so I think even if there's nothing else that anybody watching this does, it's create the time for yourself. Create the time for more of what energizes you, more of what matters to you. That's a big piece of this.
I'm busy. I'm too busy for that.
Right. Well, we prioritize what matters, right? And that's my response is look at your calendar. Your calendar tells you what you care about. If you're not on your calendar, why?
It's such a, there's no wonder that people have to be smacked down in order to listen to that phrase. I just did a workshop, but yeah, just before we recorded this, I just was in a workshop with 14 senior women leaders in an organization. And we were talking about boundaries. We were talking about only 10. So we're talking about boundaries, asking for what you want, and taking time, saying no and all that stuff. And it's so funny that the HR director kept stopping me because, you can't do that. You can't set these boundaries. You can't and I'm like, no, but you can make incremental changes so you can start room to listen to yourself. So let's go officially into the principles of Soulbbatical.
Yes, Soulbbatical. And that's with 2 B's. I always remember it. So when we're giving people the places where they can find Soulbbatical, remember it's with 2 B's. I always say 2 B's or not 2 B's.
So we'll put all that in the show notes so people
perfect. A little Shakespearean humor in there too. Yeah. So the things how I think about Soulbbatical is one, it's about fulfillment, right? So fulfillment for me, one of the biggest ahas in all of this was success and fulfillment are not mutually exclusive. It was sort of like a big, why is that even a revolutionary understanding? But I didn't understand it. I thought being successful, for me, it looked like dying on the inside. And
same thing. You just brought me back is that I always felt like the world wanted to take every ounce of blood from me. So I had to get my toys in order to be able to survive. So I had this negotiation going with, if I could drive a convertible, then I'll keep going to work. If I can do this, then I'll keep doing this, because it's really hard.
Yeah, exactly. And we find so many, those are our survival and coping mechanisms, right? And we all have our own version of what that is. So that was a big piece. And so that's why I say, to the point you made earlier, that you don't have to leave your job, right? But understanding what fulfills you, what do you want more of in the work that you're doing in the world? That's a key piece of it, right? So I think that's one thing that says,
I love it. What fulfills you? And it's not a bad word to wonder what fulfills you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's not an F word. It's a good F word, not a bad F word. Although in my book, there aren't bad F words, but that's a whole other story.
I've already have an explicit rating on this podcast, so you can talk.
Oh, you do? Oh,
Trip Lanier was my first guest, and Trip set the tone. So my podcast now has a warning.
That's hilarious. Okay, good. F-bombs to come. I'm going to make it a surprise though when I drop them.
Only used properly in a sentence.
Totally. And I'm good at that.
So is fulfillment one? Are we going through?
Yeah, fulfillment's one. We just went through self-compassion that we talked about earlier, but I really believe that self first is not selfish. We all need to put our oxygen masks on first if we want to have the energy for our love and our work and our relationships and everything else in the world. So prioritizing that, making time for it, carving out, whether you're right, maybe it's self-care Sunday. Maybe it looks like a mini Soulbbatical every quarter that you commit to yourself to getting away. I think there's small, medium, large, and extra large versions of all of these things, right? These aren't necessarily in order, and it doesn't matter. Authenticity is another one. And that was the biggest for me. I've spent my whole life being a rebel. And I tell stories in the book about when I was 16 years old and drove a car into a lake. I mean, it was literally hell on wheels. And of course, it makes sense that I went on to run global marketing for Harley-Davidson, right? Like that totally makes sense. So, and by the way, we did used to say Harley-Davidson because it just sounded so much cooler. So replace the hyphen with the F word. So I say now that authenticity is the truest form of rebellion. And when I say it, it's like, I can't help but like smile, and it fills me up. And it's like, yes, that's who I am. And that was really helpful in me trying to find my identity. And then courage. So this is like straight out of Brené Brown's book. And in fact, I'm going to plug this because I'm so excited. I'm going to train with Brené Brown in September.
Oh, wow.
On all of her Dare to Lead stuff. And so I can see how Dare to Lead and courageous leadership comes into all the Soulbbatical work that I'm doing. And I'm super excited about it. But, you know, courage is really like the courage to create what we want and the courage to live the life that we truly want. And maybe not get so caught up in all of those, you know, in titles and money and accolades and frankly, so much of the stuff that I was caught up in for so long. And then purpose. Purpose is the last one. And, you know, my purpose, like going on this journey and really starting to peel away the layers and drop the armor. And you know me well enough now to know, like, I'm still dropping the armor. Like I still sometimes have like my Wonder Woman cuffs on like I do now. And I get in kind of my badass mode. And the reality is I'm learning to become more vulnerable and receptive and open. And in the journey of that, that's when I discovered coaching. And that's when I discovered.
So what, yeah. what is the benefit of laying down temporarily your Wonder Woman cuffs? Cause they're fun to have when you choose to use them instead of when you have to use them. But what's the benefit of you opening up that way?
Such a good question. There are, I don't even think I know all of the benefits yet, Mark, which is so cool. But the benefits that I see now, like I have, well, let me see. I'm trying to think of where to start. Okay. One, I have discovered the most fascinating tribe of people because I've walked in, and you are one of the first people I met, and I walked in and I just said, I don't know what I don't know in the coaching space, and I know I'm ready to learn, and I know I want the rocket boosters attached to my ship. And I was vulnerable enough to say, I want to learn from the best. I want to hang around with people like you, Mark J. Silverman, and more of this community. And I might not have done that. What is the benefit of
having those kinds of people in your life, the people who are also vulnerable and authentic as much as they can be?
Oh, they're challenging me. They're inspiring me. They're helping me level up. And they're helping me, they're reflecting back to help me better understand who I truly am. Mm-hmm. So yeah, many benefits.
See, I always ask that because yeah. I remember just my partner of 6 years when we were first dating, he said, he shook me one night. And he just took me by the shoulders and he said, "Why won't you let me in?" And I didn't miss a beat. I said, "I don't let anybody in. I'm not going to, why would I ever do that?" And you know me, like I'm warm and fuzzy and people think they're in, right? And I was very clear. I am not letting anybody in. It hurts. Mm-hmm. But when you say, I'm going to be vulnerable and mushy and womanly and put down my cuffs, I could see a lot of people in the car going, no way, right? And then when I tell people on the other side is that on the other side of that is so much juice and life and passion and you know, just connection and pain and sorrow, like all the things I'm afraid of do happen, but it comes with such a helping of life that I didn't even know I missed.
I love that you used the word life because I say the phrase all the time now. I have never felt so alive.
It's in your eyes.
I've never felt so alive. On the audio,
but I can, like, I'm watching your eyes. You are just sparkling.
Thank you. I feel that way. I feel to my core. And I know so much of this can come off as sounding cliche. At the same time, like I feel it in my marrow. right? And I know that I wouldn't be where I am on this journey if I hadn't been doing a lot of work on opening myself up and being more receptive. And it's hard. I mean, exactly what you described, Mark, like it's still hard. And the second step for me in this journey is I opened up and told my story, started telling my story a lot over the course of the past 18 months. And one of the people I told my story to happened to, we did some work together and it became very, very good friends. And he's like, you have such a powerful story. And guess where he went to work? He went to work at Simon & Schuster. And he sold my story to his publisher before I ever walked into their office.
Wow.
And I still think today, had I not been willing to tell my story, had I not been willing to open up on the pain and frankly, a lot of the shame on some of the decisions I made and some of the things I've kept hidden and some of the things I'm writing in the book now, I never would have had that conversation. And then it sort of landed in my lap. So if anybody's ever doubting the value of opening up, and it's painful and it's super scary, like you said, there's so much goodness on the other side. I'm sitting and writing it right now. I've got a book deal to have, you know, what you said, Soulbbatical, a corporate rebel's guide to finding your best life in the universe by January, my 50th birthday.
I can't wait for people to read it.
That's a success story of vulnerability right there.
So since people can't wait for the book, how can they find you and learn about some of this brilliance?
Yeah, so I am one of those rebels who wanted to start my business without a website. I'm also now the authentic version of that rebel who says, of course you need a website, Shelley. So my website will be launching, it's either late May or early June. So not too long after this podcast goes live. And you can find me at www.soulbbatical.com. And Soulbbaticals with 2 B's. You'll put that in the show notes. Perfect. I'm also, Instagram and LinkedIn are my two favorite forms of social media. I'm on Facebook as well. You can find me as Shelley Paxton, and you can also find me as Soulbbatical Coaching. So there are many ways to find me. On LinkedIn, I also if anybody's interested, I merged my motorcycling world with my coaching world, and I just wrote an article that's getting a huge response on five things I learned about life and leadership from motorcycling.
I saw that and I bookmarked it to read it. I can't wait to.
Yeah,
great. You're rife with titles, which is really useful.
Thank you.
What are the 5 things you learned?
Oh my gosh, I'm glad you're asking me that. And I'm also like, wait a second, I have to get the article because it's right in front of me. So focus on where you want to go, not what you're trying to avoid. Okay. So in motorcycling, if you look at the wall, you're hitting the wall splat, like it's done. And I realized I'm doing that in my life. I was writing this book and all I could think about was the deadline. So the creative spigot was like completely turned off. So I looked at the clearing and now it's flowing again. So that was one. Number 2, be present. So on a motorcycle, like if you are not fully present, you cannot multitask. You have to just be present and be completely aware. And we know what multitasking is in this world. So that 3 is lean into turns. So this is actually, I think, my favorite one of all. To turn a motorcycle, you actually have to lean into the motorcycle. You have to do that to corner the turn and guide the motorcycle. And it's scary, right? You think when you're a new rider, you think you're just going to dump the motorcycle onto the ground. And it's trust and it's momentum and it's acceleration. And I realized that's everything I needed in starting my coaching business. And I doubted so early on. So I tell that story. Number 4 is it's about the journey, not the destination. So Ralph Waldo Emerson penned that, obviously, many moons ago. Writers have adopted it, but it's like we don't take enough time to create that space in our lives for synchronicity and serendipity and ideas and opportunity and idea sex and all of that beautiful stuff, right? So that's what that is kind of applied to life and leadership. And then the last one is break out of your cage. So as riders, we call cars cages because they're enclosed. And so if you think about it, you can apply that to your home, to your office, to your workspace, to a conference room. We don't break out of our cages often enough into the wilderness to spend time with nature and communing with our own thoughts and our own souls. So that's the quick and dirty on my 5 lessons.
I'm going to put the link to that article because it looks just so juicy. Now it's
awesome. Good. I had so much fun writing it. And you know what? The response to it, I mean, talk about, this is another lesson you and I both know well. It's like, get messy. Just put your thinking out there. And I just told Rich Litvin the other day, I was like, I was so scared to put this article into the world, and I don't know why. I'm like, I ran global marketing for 6.5 years at Harley-Davidson. Why would I be afraid to put this in the world? I thought somebody else has written it. Somebody can do it better. I had all the self-doubt gremlins coming up. And I put it out, and so many people, like 400 or more people, have just told me how phenomenally helpful it is, riders and non-riders alike. So yeah, I'm going to look for opportunities to kind of speak more of my truth. It was a good reminder.
It's needed. It's why I wanted you on this show. I think your voice is one of those voices that need to be heard. So I appreciate you spending time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome, Mark.
Yeah, this was a joy, full of life. And to everybody else, thank you for spending the time with us. If you like the show, please like us, share us, tell your friends. And I love you. Have a great rest of the day.